In this quick tips video, I'm going to give you a straightforward process to fix any bad habit that you might need to improve. My name is Josh Gu, and I'm taking my years of experience learning, teaching, and performing, and sharing all of my best clarinet and music tips so you can get more out of your practice, and most importantly, have fun. You can learn more about all of my many resources at quickstartclarinet.com, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post new videos. Just very briefly before we get into how to actually fix the bad habit, I want to very quickly talk about what a habit actually is. And I think if you have a little bit better understanding of what a habit is, it'll become more clear how to actually fix a habit. So what a habit is basically something that's going on autopilot and is an automatic process, sort of more in our subconscious or below our fully conscious level of thinking. So much of the brain works on a subconscious automatic process. As I was just doing that and moving my hand, I wasn't thinking, okay, move my hand kind of in a circle like this as I'm saying these words. It was all automatic. Those kinds of things happen automatic, and that's just one example. If you take a moment to think about it, you can come up with so many things that you do automatically. How you pull the covers off of yourself in the morning when you wake up, how you go to brush your teeth, how you put the toothpaste on, which hand you grab your toothbrush with, which part of your mouth you start with, how you pick up your fork to eat your food. So many things in our life are purely automatic on autopilot with no conscious effort thinking about it. You've maybe heard this idea that like humans only use 10% of our brains or something like that, which is absolutely not the case. However, it's maybe 10% of our brain that we're aware that we're using. Maybe 10% of the brain or so approximately is the kind of conscious part of the brain that's actually thinking about things and aware of things and knows what we're doing and is intentionally doing things. And when it comes to playing your clarinet or really any instrument, there's so much of it that's also automatic. Sure, consciously I can think, okay, that's an F sharp, that's the fingering for F sharp, okay, I'm gonna play it. But also there's so many times where I come across an F sharp in a scale pattern or an arpeggio pattern or something like this and just subconsciously recognize the pattern and my fingers do it, and I'm not even really aware of what my fingers are doing. And that's why fixing a habit can be so difficult, because it's the conscious brain trying to reprogram something unconscious. Let's take, for example, a couple common bad habits that people really struggle to fix. Let's say maybe a hand position thing. You realize that your hands could be a little more perpendicular to the instrument. Maybe you're coming at too much of an angle. Maybe things are getting crunched up. Maybe your fingers are too straight, something like that. And that's all automatic. When you pick up the instrument, you're going to automatically do whatever hand position issue you've been having. Same thing with embouchure changes. If you have kind of a bunched up chin while you're playing, or you're biting too much on the reed, or you don't have enough reed and mouthpiece in your mouth, that's going to happen automatically every time you put the instrument in your mouth. So it's these automatic processes that make them a habit. And that's why it's so hard to break a bad habit and retrain a habit, because it's so automatic and so deeply ingrained. The trick with habits is the more repetitions, the more times you've done it that way, the more automatic it becomes, the more it kind of anchors into that subconscious process and becomes sort of a stronger neural network in your brain and a more efficient neural network, which becomes a little problematic when you think about how many times you've grabbed the clarinet, how many times you've put the clarinet in your mouth. It's probably hundreds of times per practice session, thousands of times a week, and that can really add up to some really strong automatic programming in your sort of subconscious or below the conscious level of thinking in your brain. So how do we go about fixing it, and how do we go about changing those bad habits? The first step, the very first thing that is so important to do is make sure that you're able to do it right, period. And it's going to take a lot of thinking and a lot of conscious work to be able to do it right. Going from playing with kind of a bunched up chin all the time to a flat pointed chin, you have to just start maybe even away from the clarinet, looking in a mirror and thinking like, okay, how do I actually get this kind of shape to my mouth. Or if it's a hand position thing, you have to maybe even start again away from the clarinet, just relax the hand, and then bring the clarinet to the hand and be like, okay, I can actually cover the holes and maintain that good natural hand position. So you have to find it first. That's step one on the process of retraining a habit, is get it correct in any context. Don't think about, okay, I noticed in this really technical piece that my hands are kind of bunching up, so I'm going to try not to bunch up my hands on this complicated piece. Don't do that. Too much bandwidth, it's not going to work. Do it in a simple way. Okay, I'm going to just hold the clarinet without bunching up my hands. Not even playing a note, just hold it. So step one, get it comfortable and find it. Step two is kind of building the bridge up to eventually playing correctly on whatever complicated music. But in step two, start by doing it in the most simple music that you have. This doesn't mean pulling out Mary Had a Little Lamb or Twinkle Twinkle Again and playing through those. It means doing it in your warm-ups. Your warm-ups are, in fact, your most simple music, because your long tone exercises you've been doing, your scale exercises, articulation exercises that you do all the time, those are also automatic. So you don't have to spend really any time processing what notes you're playing, which is largely the whole point of a warm-up exercise, is that you don't have to think about the music that you're playing and can think exclusively or almost exclusively about the clarinet playing. So on your warm-ups, be like, okay, I grabbed the clarinet with good hand position, I put it in my mouth and have good embouchure. Now I'm going to play my long tones, but focus on whatever the habit is you're changing while playing the long tones. And once you can do it comfortably on the long tones, then go on to doing it on the scales. Then once you can do it comfortably on the scales, go on to doing it on articulation exercises. Once you're able to do it pretty consistently and confidently on your warm-ups, then you can start applying it to easy music. And that's step three, is to apply it to not the crazy complicated situation where you notice the bad habit's a problem. Apply it to a little bit simpler stuff, maybe your etudes or maybe even band music. And when you're playing your half notes and whole notes in whatever easy band piece you might be working on, focus on it there and start applying it to actual music. And then once you're doing that pretty comfortably and pretty regularly, then you'll probably find that it kind of automatically happens on whatever complicated, crazy thing you were looking at. You may still have to consciously work on it and slow it down and do smaller chunks on the complicated solo piece or wherever you notice the problem. But if you build it up through that process, it's going to be a lot easier. So that's the rough overview of the process. Step one, just get it in the most simple context possible. Step two, start doing it on simple music like warm-ups. Step three, start doing it on actual music, but easing your way into it on etudes or band music or things like that, or even simpler parts of solo pieces as well as possible. The one last thing that I'll say about bad habits and correcting a bad habit is, as you're working on it, if you find that things are just feeling natural and feeling normal and feeling good, then you've probably fallen back into your old habit and the bad habit that you're trying to change. As you start a new habit, it's going to feel a little bit weird, a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit awkward at first, and that's okay, and that's normal. Trust that as you get more familiar with it, it will start to feel less awkward and will actually be better for you in the long run, especially if it's a habit that a teacher has suggested that you change. Always be working towards finding the more relaxed, natural ways of doing things, the things that make the notes come out easier, make the fingers feel easier and more comfortable. But also know that if you've done a million repetitions with your bad habit, anything different from that's going to feel a little weird at first. So live with that weird feeling, settle into it. Know that if it's not feeling weird when you're doing whatever you're working on, you've probably slipped back into the old habit, until you get to a point where you're going to be playing through something and be like, oh shoot, I forgot to think about my hand position, or I forgot to think about my embouchure, and you'll check in with it, and probably every other time before that, when that's happened and you've checked in with it, it wasn't going well, you'll start to have one time where you check in with it and you're like, oh no, I think that actually was good and is actually how it's supposed to be. And then you'll focus on it and make sure that it stays good, and then your mind will wander and go off on something else, and then you'll be like, oh no, I wasn't thinking about it. I need to keep thinking about fingers or embouchure or whatever it is. and it'll probably be bad again the second time, but it'll start to become more and more frequent that you're like, oh, I wasn't even thinking about it. But it was actually good. So that's kind of what the process looks like. It can be any number of times. Sometimes you can fix a little bad habit in a week. Sometimes more complicated bad habits you'll focus on for 6 months and feel like you made some progress with it, and then kind of forget about it in the next 3 months and realize that you went back to your old habit again and have to spend another several months really digging into it. It's just the nature of how our individual sort of brains and learning work and how different parts of things work. Fixing the hand position will probably go pretty quick because we're used to consciously changing how our hands are working. Fixing a tongue position or articulation or embouchure might be a little bit more work because we're not so used to consciously controlling those muscles. So that's my quick tips on how to fix a bad habit and how to improve on any bad habit that you're working on. Follow that process, make sure that you're getting it correct in the first place, and I hope that that's helpful to sort of guide you along that process. If you have any questions about it, feel free to leave a comment. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in another one. And last but not least, a huge heartfelt thank you to the Dennersons. This is like the Quick Start Clarinet family who supports the channel and helps to make everything that I do possible. If you would like to support the channel and get some awesome rewards in return where we can work one-on-one over video and you can have my full support moving forward on your clarinet journey, then go to quickstartclarinet.com/supporter.